Hello! What are we going to be doing with Firstkiller this season? And yes, I still do have the black eye. Alright, so according to Firstkiller, no news right now. Last tweet was in 2 weeks ago, September 12th, so no news from him. He actually still has kind of himself listed as playing for the Ultimates. Achilles, who's shift RLE and does a lot of the work of breaking news in the RLCS scene. Originally it said like 2 weeks ago, Firstkiller has a few offers on the table, some from EU and some from orgs in NA where he can build a roster on his own. Vitality is a strong contender for his signature. I haven't seen him say anything about that yet, Firstkiller himself. He did confirm that yesterday, Firstkiller will not be joining Team Vitality for the 2026 season. More on Vitality and Firstkiller, etc. in the coming days. So, who knows? Information still to be announced or, shared. I have created this diagram of different options for Firstkiller in NA. Now, I couldn't put everybody on here. I tried to put at least the top 5 or 6 teams rosters. And as you'll see here, I've got like Energy on the left, Daniel Beast Mode Atomic. I have them in gray because it seems unlikely that they'll be doing any roster transfers. And then I also have Scribbles in the bottom right in gray because he's officially retired. But he's also probably the youngest player on this board. So, there's always a chance that he may be interested in coming back. So I think what would make sense is to start from the top and work our way around clockwise here. And if you think there's a certain good fit or a person you'd like to see Firstkiller team with, please leave it in the comments and let us know, and we can debate that ourselves. So starting with Chronic and LJ. So obviously the Ultimates this year were Chronic, LJ, Firstkiller. Their peak was getting second place at the first LAN major in Birmingham, where they lost to Carmine Corps. And honestly, they were even though they didn't win the NA region on points, at that point they were looking like the better team in NA, right? And then they just weren't quite able to make it work, and Energy got stronger as the season went on. So Firstkiller, Chronic, and LJ, Ultimates officially let them go or let them pursue other options, however you want to phrase it. So do you think, based on all these people here, is it still, possible that Firstkiller, Chronic, and LJ look at each other and say, hey, I think we're still the best we've got. Let's run it back. Maybe swap out the coach or potentially, just try different things this year to get the results. Know that all these guys have the talent to win LANs and can do great things in Rocket League. So, makes you wonder, is that still on the table? I think it's very possible he picks one of his teammates, like for Chronic or LJ, and adds a third there. Maybe just because I think most people can kind of look at that and say, let's not run it back. Let's not do this again, because we already know what happened with a full season together. So we need to at least change out one person. So who do you think, if Firstkiller was going to stay with Chronic or with LJ, who would you pick? I would actually kind of pick LJ, and not because I don't like Chronic. I think Chronic's a fantastic player, one of the best players in NA. But I do think Firstkiller and Chronic have teamed together a couple times, and they haven't quite found that next level. So I think it's time for these guys to split out and be on different rosters and see what they can do there. I also added Zanil, Gyro, and Andy in here, so if you feel like any of those players would mesh very well with Firstkiller, I think that's totally up for something that could be interesting. Going further to the right here, Aqua and Evo, so those guys were on the boys with Hoxer. I did put Hoxer more with Zanil because Hoxer and Zanil and Chicago were a roster earlier in the season, if I'm remembering correctly. So I put Hoxer over there, but Hoxer, Aqua, and Evo were the boys, which were one of the teams that was looking good for the last chance qualifier here in NA. Honestly, Firstkiller, Aqua Evo could be a pretty fun roster to watch, right? Like those guys would be flying all over the place, super technical, super high peak, super low floor. Well, maybe not super low floor, but low floor, super high peak. So what do you think about this roster? Firstkiller, Aqua Evo. Wouldn't that be fun? Or am I alone in thinking that? Anyways, that's a cool one. Next, we've got Gen G, Justin, Cheese, and Magic Bear. Do you see any case for keeping this roster together, or do you swap in Firstkiller for one of these players? Do you do Firstkiller, Cheese, Magic Bear, or how do you want to do it? Could be interesting. I think I would say for me personally, Magic Bear has been high on my list. I've been really liking what he's been doing this season. Felt like he didn't quite show it so much at the LAN events, but based on his online ranked play as well as the opens 1 through 6, Magic Bear to me seemed like the most promising player on this Gen G team. So maybe like Firstkiller, Cheese, Magic Bear could be good. Or, if you want to, Justin wants to play another season, then Firstkiller Justin, and then a third could be interesting. Firstkiller Justin, LJ, Firstkiller Justin, Chronic could be good vibes. I don't know. So let me know what you guys think of that. On the bottom right, we've got the Space Station Gaming Squad. Of course, like we talked about, Scribbles is retired, so we won't talk about him too much. Got Kofor and Reveal. Now, if there is probably a team with the most upside and recent results, it was probably these guys. So Firstkiller, Kofor, Reveal kind of seems like a no-brainer for an org to pick up that group. You kind of swapping out a strong player with a player who's a little bit, more established. So I feel like there's a lot of rumors around Kofor and Firstkiller potentially teaming. We did see them in the 2v2 Cash Cup, I believe, at some point during this season, and I think they won it. Sorry, I should have researched that before I started, but I believe they actually won that event, or at least they had a good run in it. So Firstkiller and Kofor have teamed together, so maybe there's something there. At the bottom here, we've got Diaz, Frosty, and Comm. So Frosty, Diaz, and CRR were the complexity roster at the end of the year. Of course, Razeable had moved to Sam and got replaced by Frosty after Frosty left SSG. Keep that all straight as much as you can. So Diaz, honestly, I think Diaz is a good candidate to go back to Brazil and play with a team there. Maybe Diaz lost Gan, maybe. Switch up Fury a little bit. Sorry, Derfinho. Could be interesting there. So, I think Diaz is a very positive player to have for our region and a very promising player, so I don't want to see him go. But I also think, that's his home country, and there's good Rocket League opportunities there for him. So I don't want to... I think he's a good candidate for that. But Diaz, Firstkiller could be an interesting combination. Frosty, also very talented player. Frosty, Firstkiller, and a third could be interesting. I think Frosty kind of has that technical high ceiling that Firstkiller would be looking for, so that way he wouldn't be constantly forced to be the playmaker. But that's kind of his style. He's a very aggressive player, very offense-oriented player. So, Firstkiller, Frosty, Diaz could be an interesting roster, like Complexity 2.0, but they swapped out CRR for Firstkiller. I don't know. Could be interesting. Comm has also come back. I think he had a soft retirement or took a break last season. I feel like what we know him for most recently was being on version 1. But so he's definitely an older player, more mature, maybe better. He's also known as a chirper, as in he likes to talk smack during matches. I don't know. If you have more Comm lore, you got to share it in the comments, because honestly, he was peaking a little bit higher before I was starting to more actively follow the scene. To be fair, so maybe Comm, Firstkiller, and then a mechanical third. Comm, Firstkiller, LJ, Comm, Firstkiller, Aqua, Comm, Firstkiller, Evo. I don't know, could be interesting. Then on the left, we've got Shopify Rebellion. What do you think about Shopify Rebellion, Firstkiller? I don't know, could work, right? Two-piece, Reddles, and Wavy. I don't know what the plan is for this roster. Shopify Rebellion seems to be very open to keeping rosters. Plus, these guys only had a partial year. So it's very possible that they run it back and decide that, they want to give it another shot. So, if you were going to swap Firstkiller in there, it would probably be for two-piece or Reddles. I think Wavy is still kind of on the way up in his 3v3 reputation. Two-piece might be a little bit on the hot seat. So would be interesting to see. Reddles, very consistent player, does have his peak moments, probably the best player to team with just based on his attitude and personality. But I think if you had to pick Reddles or Firstkiller on your team, you'd probably pick Firstkiller, right? So two-piece Firstkiller Wavy or Firstkiller Reddles Wavy could be interesting rosters. Let me know what you think about those guys. Do they have the high enough ceiling? Parth was removed from the Shopify Rebellion squad and replaced with Wavy. So, Parth, still a top caliber player in NA. Maybe he has a resurgence next season. Do you see any world where him and Firstkiller are together? I don't know if I talked about Hoxer very much. I did mention him briefly earlier. Hoxer, Parth, Firstkiller. I don't know. It could be kind of an interesting roster, right? I'm a big Hoxer believer. So I'm very curious to see where he ends up. And then I don't see, I don't really see Firstkiller replacing Daniel, Beast Mode, or Atomic unless Atomic decides he's retiring. I don't see Daniel and Beast Mode kicking Atomic. These guys are they just won Worlds. They really like each other. There's a ton, they seem like they genuinely enjoy being friends alongside being teammates. So I think that energy roster is going to stick. I don't see Firstkiller finding his way there, but if you think differently, please let me know. So first of all, if I didn't put an option on here, obviously I didn't put any other region, right? So it's still within the realm of possibility that Firstkiller goes to EU. I don't think he'd go to any other regions realistically, but maybe Twisted Minds is like, hey, Drally went to Falcons, let's get a different import. But that would be kind of hilarious in its own way. I think Firstkiller is probably staying in NA, because if you didn't want to team with Zen, who are you going to want to go team with in EU, right? It's kind of the narrative there. So let me know what you think. Was there any players I left off this list that you think Firstkiller would play well with? Sorry if I left off your favorite player. But yeah, we should be getting some interesting news about Firstkiller. I would expect to hear news within the next week or two about what roster they're going to, because, the season, we're not even that far away from the start of the next season. So it's time to lock these things in and start getting scrims and, grinding ranked again. And, it's a beautiful time to be an RLCS fan. So thank you so much for watching. Like I said, let me know what you think in the comments, please. If you like these type of videos, please let me know in the comments or with a thumbs up and subscribing so I can know to make more of this type of theoretical videos. It's fun to make, but I want to make stuff that people want to watch. So thank you so much for your attention here. Have a great day and talk soon. Bye.